Cinderby School of Design presents Tips from Real Life, a series of conversations that helps you understand the ABCs and the XYZs of design. In this episode of Tips from Real Life, we have with us Vyoma Patwa. Vyoma is the founder at Design by Vyoma. She's an architect by profession, and she discusses with us her intrinsic point of view on the process of deconstructing a project from design to execution. With an architectural degree from Kamla Raheja Institute of Architecture and a spectrum of experience gained via an exchange program with the University of Bern in Switzerland, Vyoma successfully ventured into the realm of founding her own genius practice. Vyoma's design process is shaped by her acute understanding of sensibilities, concepts, and the true philosophical essence a space holds within itself. With a diverse portfolio in the sector of medium, high-end residential projects and hospitality projects, her creative approach carefully navigates micro to macro level details that encompass every aspect of design intrinsically.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Guys, I'm just going to make it very quick and short. If there's any questions or anything in the middle where you'll feel you'll want to, stop me or say anything, you're most welcome to message or raise hand or anything that's convenient for y'all. So basically what I'm here to talk about is I've just realized over time and over executing a couple of projects and experience that initially, you tend to just go about with executing, you go about, like, say you have a project and you start off right there, bang on, thinking that, okay, I'm just going to jump into the execution stage. But over time, I've realized that execution is usually the last part that you need to get into. There's a lot of steps. If you just break down your process, like a firm philosophy that you'll have or a firm process that you have in mind, if you just break it down, it will really make your whole, this whole 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months process very smooth, very fast moving, without that extra stress and extra redos and back and forth work and stuff like that. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and maybe I'll just take you all down some pointers, and I'm going to showcase you all 2 projects where I can bring out references from the project as to why I'm saying that the initial part of a project or the initial part of a process is very important for anyone before you start into the execution stage. I've just basically broken it down very simplistically on 7 stages for y'all. It's a more detailed process, obviously, which is there, the last slide. Y'all can refer to it whenever if y'all want for a little more detail. So obviously, the first thing is your client brief. Now, when we're talking about a client brief, it's just not whether, they want ABCD or EFG or something, it is really like you need to really understand the crux of it as to what in that brief is what they really want. What are the priorities in that brief? Understanding the kind of lifestyle the client has, the kind of way they use spaces, or whether if it's a commercial place or a hospitality place, what is the whole core purpose of that particular restaurant or that particular office and stuff like that. So it's really like a bonding that you need to do with your client because unless they can connect with you, they're not going to be able to open up. You're not going to be able to understand exactly what they're liking, not liking, and so on and so forth. Second most important thing is your site analysis, which is what I was going to. The whole presentation is based a lot on the site analysis because I've realized site analysis actually it helps you develop your concept. It kind of gives you your whole look and feel of the place also to quite some extent, especially when you know what's this volume of the space you're looking at, or what's the direction of the light that's coming in, what's your, entry exit points going to be like, what's the first look of the particular place that you're going to see when you do your site analysis. So, and a lot of times at site, you have a lot of constraints that you see, like you see these drawbacks or beams and columns and multiple things jutting out and not as you would expect it to be. So if you've considered those items initially, later on site execution, you're not going to suddenly be like, oh, I have this XYZ column that's coming out, which I didn't realize. Now it's readjust our designs or modulate some of our details to try and fit into that. So, you need to make sure that that is very crisp and clear when you have a site analysis. Next is your core concept and brainstorming, which is, of course, you figure out that X factor that you want to get into your project. What is that innovative or new thing that you want to do for each project, which will make that project unique compared to your other projects, then, of course, is your basic designs where you have your first set of furniture designs, you have your first set of look and feel, your mood boards, and make sure your client is engaged at all stages with it so that, at no point you are going back and coming back to a particular stage. You're not redoing any work because at every stage you've got your confirmation and you've gone ahead after client's approval and clients, liking, disliking. So you'll understand things better. The next one is statistical data, which I know is one of the most boring and the most tedious things. But trust me, if you get that in place in the start, your execution or your working is going to go so much more simpler. I mean, it is a blessing. Initially, when I used to not waste too much time on that, but with time, I realized how important it is. So when I'm talking about statistical data, I'm mainly talking about your timelines. You need to have a proper chart with your timelines. So you can align your vendors also. You can make sure your materials on site are coming as per when it's required, rather than waiting for the last minute and then suddenly you realize there's a lag of 1 week because you're either going for selecting the material with the client or you're either waiting for the vendor to deliver that material. So, if you have your timelines in place, it really helps sort out that part of the area on site. Secondly, it even helps your clients with the finances. If the client's finances are in place, your project tends to move much faster ahead and without any glitches, without anything of, okay, I'm clearing the thing or give me a week's time more. So, it helps you in all of that. And of course, your budget, because no matter how great your designs are, if it's not going to fit into the budget of a client, you have to rework, you have to go back and things are going to change. And then, when you do things in bits and parts, overall, you'll see that in your design. You'll see somewhere that there is a glitch here or there is some error that has come in the middle, which you've just tried to cover up and stuff like that. The second last one is your detailed design stage. So once you've got your budgets and everything approved from the clients is when you go on to your detailed design, which is all your meticulous working drawings that you need to submit on site, before your plumbing details, your electrical, your false ceiling, your carpentry details. Make sure all of that is kind of aligned with the budget, with the client's likes, with your look and feel and your mood board. And last is when you go on to the execution stage. So once you have all of these in place, when you start your execution, even your contractors or people on site, they know very clearly what is the detail, how it's supposed to be done. You know the materials that you're going to be using. You have your vendors aligned in place. So your execution actually comes down by a good 50% in terms of the timeline. And I have personally experienced that. So I just thought I'll, share with you all one of this project that we had done recently. So basically here I'm talking about this, how you're going to delayer a site and how it really helps you in your actual execution when you jump onto it. So this was a restaurant, like a resto bar project placed in South Bombay. And the thing is, there was a very tight timeline. We had like around 3 weeks to complete the whole project from start to end. Okay, like literally we had 21 days. It was a last minute decision that came up with the client and they approached us and they said that, this is the timeline. Can you do it? And is it possible? Then we'll go ahead. So we took up that challenge. I'll just brief you all. So this was the place. It was around 1,500 carpet of the space. The kitchen was separate. So this was the old picture. It had a huge bar in the center, as you see out here. And it was a very old, dingy looking place with not much ceiling height and stuff like that. They wanted to make it like an all-day dining with some wine, beer, kind of a restaurant bar kind of a feel, which would probably turn into like some kind of a event place or like dance place in the evening and stuff. So this was the old plan on the left. You can see this huge bar out here in the center, which kind of blocked the whole circulation. The kitchen and everything was also far, so they had to like meander across the whole bar to come across to serve or to serve the bar. So it kind of didn't work that correctly. So what we simply did, because we had time constraint also, we just decided to get into this one big, huge civil work where we just removed this bar and we shifted it right at the end of the corner. Like you can see out here, it's on the back end. So this kind of opened up the whole place for the people, for the customers. And it increased our circulation, increased our seating capacity. So things worked out much better. So this was like how it looked like afterwards. This is when we shifted the whole bar out and we simply retained the columns. We retained the existing structure because obviously. And we had loose furniture, so you could like anytime move around, make it a dance floor, whatever was comfortable for the thing. So you can see the bar here at the end. So it was just a clean, neat bar tucked in at the end. And they wanted, like as the name suggests, pergola. They were looking at having a kind of an indoor-outdoor kind of a blurred line place where you can just come in casually with your friends with music and have a couple of drinks and stuff like that. As you see, this was again the old pictures. You can see the highlighted beams that we had. So here, what we did, like, we knew this was a constraint we had at the site. You see, the ceiling height at most of the site is quite short. Only at this one place was a central double height ceiling, but it had like these two beams that were flanked by it on the side. And this was kind of the focal point of the whole place. Like they used to have all these matches and stuff screened here. And they wanted to introduce like a small live performance kind of a stage out here for upcoming artists and live singing and stuff like that over weekends. So we basically just decoded the whole beam. We used the structure, the beams as it is. We exposed everything and we just gave it like a nice black paint so that, it can contrast the whole light floor that we have, the light decor that we're looking at. And at the same time, we didn't have to worry about all these extra technical things because it was black and it was going to be dim lit. So it didn't really matter much. So we used this height to create this kind of a pergola, kind of a wooden effect. So this kind of became like their center stage where when they didn't have a live performance, they could have used it as spaces to increase their dining and capacity, seating capacity. And otherwise, it was doubled up as live performances or a dance floor or something like that. Uh, so again, this was the look of the old bar that we had, which was quite low in height and it was too huge, too large. It occupied a huge chunk of the space, which was not very necessary. So we changed it to something like this. It was just a very simplistic, geometrical form, clean lines with the same monochromatic shades that we used everywhere. We experimented with the lights and stuff a little bit because that became like one small element that we introduced in the whole thing. You can see this whole Madeira on the top. So it's just like a thing of alcohol, like just like a replication of alcohol, Madeira that was kept up in form of lights. Yeah, these are just some images of the bar. Again, this was how the old walls look like. I mean, it had a lot of leakage problem also because it was an old building, old construction building. So what we did, we decided to just remove these sheets that were there, and we literally just exposed the wall with just a nice whitewash because we had time constraint. We didn't have to get into too much of extra decor and stuff. So something like very simple readings from site can actually help you develop like as to how you want to go about. If you see, these are the old structure, these girders that were there because, as I mentioned, it was an old construction. So everything to amalgamate the whole ceiling, which had multiple heights and exposed beams and AC ducts running and everything, we just gave it a plain black paint, plain whitewash for the walls, and that's it. Just had some loose furniture kept in, so it just changed the whole place. So again, we continued. The only thing that we used were these wooden rafters, what we used for the pergola. So we just continued that for the entrance way because this place was on the first floor. So we had to make sure that the entrance also is equally welcoming and equally gives you that vibe of the pergola and the whole indoor-outdoor feel. So this was one project, and it actually got completed in literally 25 days or something. And this could only happen because we made sure we had everything aligned as per the process that I'm trying to explain y'all. We got our sites reading so nicely, so clearly that we exactly knew what we had to do with our site for each and every surface, whether it's the ceiling, whether it's our walls, whether it's our flooring, or how we're going to deal with the structure that we have on site. So things get much simpler, if you have all of that in place. Just quickly coming to the second project, which is a residential project. So this is around it's like around a 1,300, 1,400 square feet place, which is we kind of, I'll show you how we got the whole layout also in place. So when we got the place, it was literally nothing but the exterior four walls and just the columns and the beams that we had in place. We absolutely had no internal walls, nothing. It was a totally dilapidated, half working construction kind of a place. So one drawback that we that we had on the site was we could have openings only on the shorter side. I mean, they had apartments on the other end, on both the other sides, so we couldn't really have openings, and this was the lobby area. So our openings were only possible, you can see on the sides. This was just a rough structural. This is like where all your beams and columns. So you see, we have these multiple beams that were there on site. All of these, the orange ones, with different heights, different thicknesses. So we had to make sure that we acknowledge these site conditions, and we see how we can use that to our design's advantage, rather than just making it like, oh, this beam is suddenly in the middle, I don't know what to do about it, like it's just there, you know. So we had to acknowledge a lot of these smaller site errors and site drawbacks that we had. So what we did, since we had ventilation possible only on one edge for this, we kind of had an open kitchen, dining, and living area. And we decided to have the three bedrooms, of course, each of them having one ventilation window, because that was, we didn't have another option. So this was a very clear cut layout that we knew we had to do. We had to go ahead with this layout such that the whole place is well lit and well ventilated. So if you see, this was the old pictures. We of course had one more weird column, just one column. There was no symmetry, nothing, because again, this was also a very old construction. So the building had gone through multiple different kinds of construction techniques that you see. They had metal jackets to brick piers to RCC beams. So they had all different kind of construction techniques in that one apartment. So if I'm just moving forward, so this is exactly how the old place looked like. We just decided this is how we got the whole place ready. So as you could see, this was the old column that was existing. So we just created this one more column here, which was a pseudo column, which added added up as storage space also. And we intentionally kept the color palette very light because the spaces were tight. We didn't have huge windows or something like that. So we made sure that the indoors don't feel as if, you know, you are stuck in a small space or you're stuck in a claustrophobic space. So we intentionally have just added color and a little bit of color pop and just pillows or planters, and everything is kept very monochromatic beige with just little pops of brass, which adds that extra lux or extra luxury look to the whole space. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The two columns, one was existing, one we created just for the look, just to get a symmetry. And again, you can see we have columns jutting out here, these and this one here. So those are, again, we just edge them with brass piping and stuff so that it gives you that extra little luxury look to the whole space. So this was the old look of it. Again, you can see the space is quite tight. So we came up with something like, which is a glass. We got a glass, nice big huge glass, crisp glass piece behind as one of the main wall. So it kind of reflected the light also, and it kind of opened up the space visually also. That really made the space look much nicer compared to what the existing situation was. This is just the entry look of the place, the first glimpse that you see. Again, we doubled up the door to add extra ventilation, so you could keep it open at the same time. You know, you could just shut it when you didn't need it, so that, you know, you have your privacy also in place. Again, the flooring we've selected that, again, due to site constraint, we decided to have the same monochromatic flooring, but again, it has a little bit of it has its own grains and own character, you know, so that kind of binds the whole living, dining, and the kitchen together. And we've used the same flooring in the whole house, so it gives a much larger feel to the whole place. Coming to the dining, again, as I mentioned, this was a metal head, like a column head that we had in the middle of nowhere, and it was just one, and we couldn't do anything about it because it was a structural element. So what we decided, we just used this to our advantage. We kind of gave these two kind of arch curve look, we made the pseudo one. And then this became the backdrop of our dining. We had some of the remaining marble pieces, which I'm sure at any site when you use marble, you are going to have some kind of wastage. So we kind of reused that to make this small wall installation kind of a piece, which became the highlight and the backdrop for our dining. Again, you can see the dining is also made in a very simple monochromatic line, so that you don't have anything gaudy popping up, or you don't have anything kind of taking it away from the expanse of the space that's available there. This was the kitchen, which was part of the living. So your kitchen, dining, and your living is like an L-shaped integrated open space. But again, yet the kitchen still is tucked away slightly so that it has its own, workings and privacy that doesn't disturb your living. We just added a small color pop here to add some vibrancy or some liveliness in the whole space. Again, looking at, if you see the designs of the false ceiling, even that was largely evolved because of the site readings that we had. If you see here, this is the picture of the living where we had these multiple beams running across with different heights and at different sections in plan. So it wasn't even equally spaced or anything. So we decided, let's not, cry about it and get the whole false ceiling height lower. That's why we got these beautiful niches and we highlighted them, and that kind of became the design for our false ceiling throughout, which kind of added to the height of the space. Again, you can see these are the numerous beams we had in one of the bedroom areas. So, and there were just too many of them. But and you can see how we have these freestanding columns in the middle of nowhere, absolutely different construction techniques from each other. Like there's no familiarity or similarity at all. Again, this is just showing you some of the old images so you can understand that how, if you've done your reading correctly, because what happens if you don't have all of this in place, when you're going to get all your wirings pulled through your false ceiling, or when you're going to have your AC pipelines going in, you're going to have a lot of trouble because you realize, oh, there's a beam coming in, I can't pull my AC line. How do we go about? And again, there'll be a pause and discussion in your execution process, and it'll take away another 2 weeks or 10-15 days in solving that each and every issue. So we had all of this acknowledged and incorporated in our design. So things went much smoother. Like this whole project was completed in probably 3.5 months, start to end, and you can see the condition of the site. So as I mentioned, since we had so many beams, again, a similar false ceiling look you can see where we've introduced these niches everywhere in the ceiling to get a design going. So this room was the only room where we added a little bit of color, added a little bit of depth with the whole dark color that was using a dark color, and again balancing it with your beige and neutrals, which kind of carries forward the same language from the living. That's just to, again, at the entrance, you can see all of this is evolved because of the beams and the multiple columns that we had. This is just to show the overall look. So there was one interesting factor that we had in this room. You can see this column. It was pretty much in the center of nowhere. It kind of came right in the middle of our entrance passageway for the room. It kind of broke our circulation pattern also. So what we decided that let's just use this to our advantage. So we kind of created this small niche kind of a space here, which we used for a light installation. And this kind of behind this light installation is where we had our wardrobes placed. So it kind of gave a privacy to the wardrobe and the bathroom area also. So the minute somebody enters the room, it's not like, the whole room is given away to you. But this is what you see when you enter. So, it kind of takes away from the fact that there is a column and you can't really make out, it feel as if that you've intentionally created that niche for the space and not because you had to, because there was a column there. So just smaller details, which probably might help you all in, this was the second room where, again, this was done on a very simplistic line. Luckily, we didn't have too much of site issues here. It was a simple ceiling and a clean space. And we added like the small seat and stuff like this. So, it kind of opens up the space a little more, gives a little more area to, have your friends over or have people over. And of course, we use the same monochromatic lines because this was for the elderly couple. So they didn't want to go really experimental with the whole thing. And this was the last room. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this was the last room. So again, since this room was a very tight room, but it was a guest room, so we decided to add some color here because, it was a guest room. So people wouldn't mind, for a few days if you have a vibrancy in your room, if you're not somebody who likes too much of color and pattern and print. And since it was a tight room, we kind of doubled up visually the space by adding this huge mirror piece. It kind of caught the sunlight also that was coming in from the window that you can see opposite. So it filled the space also with naturally lit light and light with a lot of light. And again, it opened up the space visually where you don't feel like, oh, it's too tight. And this also doubled up as a dressing. So there were a lot of advantages we had because of our readings that we did correctly. So we exactly knew how we wanted to treat each room, and what's the advantage or what's the drawback that we have as to how we're going to make sure that this doesn't become like a slowing down process in our execution. So that was the overall look. This is just a detailed phase-wise breakup of before you get into execution. So if I'm not going to get into details, but it's just a reference for y'all. If y'all, it's very self-explanatory. So the last stage is your phase 4, which is your handover, in which you start getting into your execution. So if you finish all of this very correctly, trust me, your execution is going to get way simpler and things will work. Like even the clients will be more happy because they are not being bothered every now and then with, oh, this is a problem that we're facing now, or this is a new issue that we've come up on site. How are we going to solve it, or how are we going to resolve it? It will also shoot up your budgets because if your timelines go off, then you're going to land up spending this much more amount of money for the same amount of work that you're going to do over a longer period of time.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Design Tips from Real Life. Subscribe to the Cinder Bay School of Design YouTube channel for more such videos. Stay tuned for all the updates on our Instagram page. Cinder Bay, design your creative future.